This one household item has dug a $1.6 trillion hole in the pockets of America, and it only seems to be getting worse. Over the past 3 years, 8 out of 10 new cars were bought with an auto loan, and I want to show you how that one purchase can cost you over $3.5 million. And I'll talk about some alternative options you have so you can get the most out of your car while also building wealth. Most people don't realize just how expensive a new car really is, and they cost far more than the price you see at the dealership. And I'll prove it to you with how much it's costing you over time with opportunity cost as well. It's the opportunity cost you're losing out on when you could be investing that money and actually building your wealth. According to kellybluebook.com, the 5-year cost of a new car is almost double the actual sticker price that you see at the dealership. For example, if you buy a new car that costs around $19,000, you're going to be paying something like $22,000 in fuel, insurance, taxes, fees, all of that stuff. And then the car is also going to depreciate by another $13,000, which brings you to almost double the actual cost of the car itself. Now, here's where things get really crazy. The Money Guy show, you may have seen them on YouTube. They talk about how $1 today is worth $88 in the future over the course of your lifetime from age 20 to age 65. And the idea behind that is that if you invested $1 at age 20 and you let that grow all the way until age 65, it would be worth around $88, assuming an 8% return. So now if we take that same principle, that same idea, and added it to the average cost of a new car in the USA, which is $40,000. If you multiply $40,000 by 88, that's over $3.5 million. And that's where I get the number saying that your new car could cost you up to $3.5 million over your lifetime, because technically, if you just invested that money instead of spending on a new car that you don't necessarily need, you could have theoretically $3.5 million. And I get it, that sounds a little bit extreme, and I'm taking into account a lot of assumptions with this scenario, but the main point is cars can get really expensive and they cost a lot more than just the price that you normally see. And again, that $40,000 scenario that we just talked about, that's not even including the interest payments, the gas, the insurance, or maintenance of the car itself. And so I'm going to break down each of those categories to show you how much it really costs to buy a $40,000 vehicle. So according to Statista.com or Statista, 8 out of 10 new cars in the last 3 years were bought with a loan. That means everybody who walked into a dealership and bought a new vehicle, they did it with a loan and not paying cash. And considering the average new car loan in America is around $40,000 with an interest rate of 6.84%, people are spending a lot of money when they don't really need to. And used cars are even worse. They're around an average of $26,000, but the interest rate is killer. It's 12%. And if you know anything about investing, you know that 12% is a pretty generous return to get on your money that even Uncle Warren and Uncle Charlie would be proud to get. So if we're paying 12% instead of earning 12%, I hope it makes sense that that's a pretty high interest rate to pay. Anything in the double digits starts to get a little scary. So first, let's start with breaking down the interest payment and see how much we're actually paying in just pure interest. So again, we're gonna start with a $40,000 vehicle. The loan term is gonna be 60 months, which is pretty typical. That's 5 years to pay off your car loan. The interest rate is gonna be 6.84%. And let's assume that we put a $5,000 down payment for this car. And then there's also going to be some taxes and some fees to pay, of course. So all in all, our average monthly payment is going to be $761, which is right around the national average car payment for a new car right now. And as you can see, if we took 5 years to pay this thing off, it would cost actually $50,000, a little more than $50,000, because we have fees and around $7,000 in just interest alone. And that interest is basically money that you will never see back again. That goes straight to the dealership or whoever's giving you the loan. One of my financial philosophies is to not pay fees, or at least to try to avoid them as much as possible, because usually they're just add-on payments that you don't really need to pay. A better way to approach this is to save up enough money so that you can pay cash for a car that you can actually afford. For instance, instead of paying $7,000 in just pure interest payments, take that $7,000, instead find a used Toyota or a used Honda in your area, and with $7,000 you can usually find one with plenty of mileage to get you through the next few years. That way you save $33,000 from the initial purchase, and you're not paying $7,000 in interest. Now that's $40,000 that could be put towards investing for something that can grow your wealth instead of paying for something that burns it away. And just for funsies, let's see what we could conservatively make in the stock market if we instead put that $33,000 to work. So if you put that $33,000 into an index fund like VOO and you just left it there for 5 years, assuming an 8% average annual return, it'll grow to just over $49,000 or $16,000 in interest paid to you compared to that $7,000 of interest we paid to somebody else. Now that's a much better deal in my opinion. Now as far as depreciation goes, this is where your car loses value every single year because it's getting older, there's going to be some wear and tear on it, so it's going to be worth less as you drive it. So over the first 5 years of a new vehicle, typically depreciation eats away about 60% of your car's value. So that means if you buy a $40,000 vehicle, it's going to be worth $16,000 after 5 years. And you might be wondering why a car might depreciate, but think about it. You're putting mileage on it, it's getting older, it has wear and tear, it needs parts replaced, it needs maintenance. Not everybody takes great care of their vehicles, and new models of that same car usually come out every single year, and that pushes the price of the older models down as well. And I'm sure you've heard this too, but the moment that you drive a new car off of the lot, as soon as you leave the dealership, you lose about 10% of that car's value right away. And so for our example, that's like taking $4,000 out of your pocket and just throwing it out the window as soon as you drive away from the dealership. And again, not to mention all the other costs like car insurance. Having car insurance is enforced by law in every state except I think New Hampshire. Don't quote me on that. And it can vary greatly as far as costs go depending on what company that you use and how much coverage you want for your car. So if you have an old beat up car, it may not be worthwhile to go for the full coverage and pay a lot every single month because the car's not going to be worth that much if you were to get in a wreck and wanted money from the insurance company. However, if you buy a brand new vehicle, in my opinion, I think it makes sense to pay a little bit of a premium for more coverage for that car because it's going to be worth a lot more. And if you don't have coverage and you were to get in a wreck pretty early on, or even if you were driving home from the dealership, if you don't have enough coverage for it, you're basically throwing away all that money that you're already spending on the vehicle. So that's another strike against your bank account if you're buying a new car. The insurance itself is also going to be more every single month. And according to Progressive, the average cost per month for full coverage is around $150, which comes out to about $1,800 per year. So don't be afraid to shop around for the best deal with different car insurance companies before you actually decide to go forward with it. Many times these prices can be negotiated, especially if you're already with a company and you tell them that you're looking for a lower price or that you might leave. It's far more valuable to them if you stay for a long time and pay less money than if you were to pay a lot of money for a little bit and then move companies. So the lifetime value of a customer to the insurance company is one of the most important metrics that they care about, and they want to keep you on. And so make sure that you call them and at least try to negotiate the price before you decide to move on to somebody else. One of the bigger payments for cars over time is fuel. Now, on average, gas costs an additional $130 to about $200 per month. Of course, depending on the vehicle that you drive, how often you drive it, et cetera, but that's going to be roughly $1,500 to about $2,400 every single year that you're paying for gas. Now, I shop at Costco, so I typically get about 30 cents off every single gallon. And over the course of a year, that saves about $100 to $200 depending on how much I drive. And that alone pays for the Costco membership as well. And so it's kind of a 2-for-1 in terms of savings. I get to pay less for gas and I get the free Costco membership, which then I pay less for groceries overall. Another option to save money in this area is to just buy a more fuel efficient vehicle. So I used to drive an old truck that got maybe 14 miles per gallon to it, and it cost like $70 to fill up. But now we swapped to a car that pretty much doubles miles per gallon to that and cost half. And so I'm always happy to see that whenever I fill it up, it only costs about $30 or $40 and I can still go the same distance. Now, the last option is you could go nuclear and buy an electric vehicle, but typically on average, electric vehicles cost more than gas vehicles. So it might not be worth it to pay more for a vehicle just to save on charging. Now, as far as maintenance goes, according to AAA, maintenance on average per year costs around $800, which is about $66 a month. Now, in my experience, maintenance has costed a little bit more than that, but I have also always bought older used cars. And so maintenance, I think, naturally is going to cost a little bit more. So with a new car, maybe $800 is around the right number. So we'll just stick with that for now. Now, for basic things like oil changes, swapping out an air filter, tire rotations, etc., I think $66 a month is a pretty good place to start. And you could do something like put that in a sinking fund, which just means every month you put away $66 and that stacks up over time until you actually need to pay for maintenance on the vehicle. And then you have that money saved away and you don't have to worry about it. And if your car is making weird noises or leaking anything or feels different while you're driving, getting it checked early can usually save you a ton of money. Now, I remember a few years ago, the door on my old truck started to get a little bit stuck every time I tried to open it, and I kind of pushed it off for a while, and it just got worse and worse until I literally could not open the door at all. And so I continued to push it off, and my wife would laugh at me every time I did this, but I would go around to the passenger side and hop over the middle console just so I could get in my truck to drive. But that got old very quickly, and so I took it to a mechanic. He couldn't open the door. I took it to 3 total mechanics, and finally the last one was able to take the door off just so we could troubleshoot what was going on. Turns out I just needed a whole new door at this point instead of a tiny fix had I brought it in initially, and that costed me well over $1,000 because I had to find the door itself across the country, have it shipped over, and then pay for the labor to replace the entire door itself, all because I was a little bit too lazy and a little bit too cheap to go get it fixed early on, and then it ended up costing me more than it should have. So be sure to stay on top of maintenance for your vehicle if you don't want to pay extra. So let's break down the full opportunity cost of buying a new car in the first 5 years. So again, the new car costs $40,000 itself. In interest and fees, you're probably going to pay around $10,000 extra. For depreciation, we know it's going to depreciate about 60%, so that's going to be $24,000 as well. Insurance over the course of 5 years will be around $10,000. Fuel is also going to be $10,000, and then maintenance for a newer car will be about $5,000, for a grand total of $100,000 for a new vehicle in the first 5 years. Now, if we compare that to a used Toyota, for example, the initial cost for the used car is going to be about $7,000. Interest and fees will be zero because we're not getting a loan for this. Depreciation, I'm going to say, is around $3,000. Let's just say it's close to half. Once a car is past 10 years old, it's usually depreciated about 90% of its value, and so it can't really fall that much further, but let's just say for this scenario, it's going to fall another $3,000 in value. Again, insurance for a used car, you're going to pay a little bit less generally, so we'll say $4,800. Fuel might be the same, so let's just call that $10,000. And then maintenance is going to be a little bit more, so I'm going to put double what the maintenance is for a used car versus a new one. So let's put $10,000 there, and that's a grand total of $34,800. But don't forget, earlier in the scenario, we bought the car for $7,000 and then we invested the remaining $33,000 so that it could grow over the next 5 years. So over 5 years, that $33,000 has grown to about $49,000. So if we subtract the amount of money that we've earned from our investments, which is $49,000, minus the $34,800 for the total cost of the used car, we get a positive $14,200. So if we compare one person who buys the new car for $40,000 to someone who buys a used car for $7,000 and invests the remaining amount of money, we have a total difference of $114,000 after 5 years. So the first person is negative $100,000. The other person is positive 14 grand. And so that's a massive 6-figure difference between two individuals from just one decision that they made. And this is one of the biggest problems that we see in America right now. Again, I said at the beginning of the video, it's over $1.6 trillion of car loans that we have. And so people who keep buying new cars or keep getting a loan on their vehicle, they will continue to stay in debt compared to the other person who doesn't mind buying the used car so that they can actually build wealth over time, so that they're not looking rich, they actually are rich. So the car is going to cost far more than you actually realize. And if you don't hear anything else in this entire video, please hear this. Just because you can make the payment does not mean you can afford it. So I hope you found this video helpful, or at least eye-opening, to see how much extra costs actually come with buying a car. I wanted to make this as transparent as possible because a lot of people struggle to get ahead financially, and they don't realize that something like buying a car is really holding them back. So if you can get past the idea that driving a used car at least 10 years old is lame or boring or it's not as cool, if you can get past that idea, you get to actually spend all the money that you actually have now to build wealth, to buy investments, to buy things that actually grow and improve your life. And if you do that patiently and diligently and consistently, you're gonna have so much money left over that you can go buy that fancy car cash. You're not paying interest, and that way you can have your cake and eat it too. So make sure to like and subscribe for more money tips you can actually use. Go sell that new car, buy a used one, and invest the difference. Peace. You're Mikkel.